What's going on, guys? Welcome to Everything Always. My name's Michael Roman, aka Allfires. Hopefully by now you've had a chance to catch the third episode of Loki, one which we all went in blind. None of the YouTubers or the critics got to see any pre-screeners for this, and the episode delivered on a ton of levels. Major reveals for both the TVA, the character of Lady Loki. We can comfortably call her that now with the dialogue. She's enchanting people, sure, but she's definitely a variation of him. Well, unless she's lying, which leads to the fact that the whole episode could have been a lie if one of them were enchanted. And did Loki use the time stone at the end of the episode, or was that major telekinesis, or maybe even something else? Of course, ending on a major cliffhanger. How in the world are they going to make it off Lamentis, which happened to be the name of the episode? We're breaking down all the finer points, WTFs, things you missed in Easter eggs in this, the third episode of Loki, including the major reveal for the TVA that they're all variants, and the second reference to Throg in the MCU. We're breaking it all down, but first, if you could grab the subscribe button. We're still giving away a PlayStation 5 now at 900,000 subscribers, as well as Disney Plus subscriptions every week while the shows are live. In fact, we'll announce a new winner at the end of this. We're also giving away this insane Avengers 118, graded in a 9.4 CGC signature series, which means CGC, the company that graded this comic, was there in person when it was signed by Tom Hiddleston Loki and Scarlet Witch Elizabeth Olsen, who happened to feature side by side on the cover. If you want to be entered to win any of the giveaways or future prizes, all the same rules will always apply. Hit the subscribe button because you need to be a subscriber. Leave a comment down below, and if you want, stick around to the end of the video. We'll get into all the giveaway stuff again there and announce a brand new Disney Plus subscriber winner. So first up, and real talk, let's all get on level real quick about going into episode 3 or the rest of the series in Loki. Because of who the writers are, we sort of have an idea how they feel about the importance of things. They feel about time travel, and or one episode in particular from season 1 of Rick and Morty, the writers on this show talking about a simulation inside a simulation inside a simulation. That's right, some real Matrix stuff. And so before we get started into this episode, because it opens with the inside of an enchantment, you have to realize that at any point throughout this episode, dealing with one Loki means there's some deception around the corner. We're dealing with two Lokis that are still trying to feel each other out and or outsmart each other. So there's going to be several times throughout this episode where things may or may not have been left particularly ambiguous, and that's because they want to lead into this literal trope of expect the unexpected. Now it opens up from the inside of an enchantment, and really this is doing two things, this opening scene. First of which, Sylvie is establishing what her ultimate plan was, and I don't think it was as big as where she was sending those specific reset bombs, just that she was sending enough of them to create enough chaos to empty the TVA for her ultimate plan, which we hear her ask the last question out of that enchantment of C20, where are the elevators? And she replies that they're golden. She wants easier access to the elevators with an empty TVA so that she can get to the timekeepers. That's really as simple as her plan is, and they establish that in the scene. Also show us from C20's perspective what it's like to be on the inside of an enchantment. So from there, we're basically caught up where we were at the end of episode 2. You see her unenchant C20, then through a tempad door, enter the TVA. Over the intercom, you hear them saying, protect the timeline. All the TVA agents are scurrying, emptying the agency just the way she wants it. Now, as she makes her way towards the elevator, I really like a couple of things that happen in this scene. The first of which, as she goes to try and enchant that TVA agent, her magic quickly sizzles there. You see it really quick in a couple of frames. That's because it's already established magic doesn't work in the TVA agency, which makes her resort to physical combat, which we all see she's more than capable of. I also really like this moment where Loki turns around and stares at the locker, realizing that after Mobius had handed them those daggers, Hunter B-15 walks by and grabs them, puts them in that same locker. So while he magically can't create daggers to engage Sylvie, he's able to grab these daggers and enter the hallway, key up the scene we've seen in a ton of the trailers leading up to now, right as she's making her way to that gold elevator, and as Ravonna Renslayer comes down the hallway, presumably to try to stop both of them, maybe with some success, although going up against two Lokis, she probably was going to be a little outmatched. He quickly slips the tempad out of Sylvie's jacket and sends them to Lamentis 1, where we see it's the year 2077, and Sylvie knows this because presumably she's been hiding out in all of the apocalyptic events, searching them, taking all these years to set up that plan. She knows about all of them, and she knows this happens to be the worst one. Now, it's important to note for the second time that this episode is called Lamentis, and it would be easy to believe that's just simply because the whole episode is set there. However, This planet plays an important role from where it debuted in the comics during the Annihilation Conquest storyline. That's right, this is the second Easter egg for Quasar in just 3 episodes, and a major crossover point for what might be the second iteration of Guardians of the Galaxy. Characters like Peter Quill, but also Moondragon, that's Heather Douglas's Drax's daughter, who we expect to be introduced to and taking up the mantle of the next team, including Quasar, going into the future of the MCU. This planet features during the Annihilation Conquest storyline, which some scoopers like Mikey Sutton have said have been a storyline they've been kicking around and possibly eyeing for the MCU for quite a while. We now have the planet introduced in a future apocalyptic event. We will probably see Lamentis again in the future of the MCU, either tied to the Guardians of the Galaxy for an important location for them. It's also on the outskirts of Kree space. We know the Kree, introduced during Captain Marvel and Guardians of the Galaxy, will go on to play a future role in the MCU as well. One way or another, this is not the last time we're going to see Lamentis. Now, real quick, I want to point out something before we start getting into all this multi-level simulation inside of a simulation inside of a simulation stuff. I do like that they took this opportunity to match these 2 Lokis, both with their power sets and in physical combat, because Marvel Studios has always done that, going back all the way to the first Avengers. When you first get heroes or villains encountering each other, you have a quick matchup to play the old game of who would win, and we see that they're actually pretty equally matched, considering she's not able to enchant Loki. Or is she? We're going to get into that. And this is where the games begin, because I want to point out, and just for a second, that Loki's magic is now back on the table. We see that instantly when they engage each other. He's able to teleport behind her. Now, when she picks up the temp pad and it says low juice, this is what I meant about having to start to decide what you take at face value. We can either believe that Loki is playing a trick on her and that temp pad has a ton of juice. Remember, he just used it to send them there. Or we can assume that it is actually low on juice. The same way we can assume that when she goes to enchant him and he says it won't work, that maybe indeed he knows all about enchantment and at some point enchants her. Real quickly, how that theory would go is she explains she needs to touch someone and grab hold of their mind. He asks how enchantment works, but in the scene prior to that, when she touches his neck, he immediately says, "Are you trying to enchant me? It won't work because I have a strong mind." And in episode 2, after engaging with Mobius with a very high level of specificity about what his own power set is, when first he sees Sylvie engage in enchantment, he calls it a coward's trick. So either he was lying all those times or lying now about needing her to explain what enchantment is, and you have to kind of admit that her demeanor really changes towards him at some point on the train. When she goes to grab his neck, or at any point that they were physically touching, he might already know how to enchant someone and be enchanting her. We already know that she knew exactly what this place was, and because she's been surfing apocalyptic events to sort of hide and set up her plan, she may have already been here several times, have memory of this place. All he would need to do is touch her, have her touch him. He takes control of her mind using this memory as a place to create an enchantment, the simulation inside the simulation. And while I might be totally wrong, and what played out in the episode may have actually played out, the reason I bring this up is because some weird things happen along the way that may need some explanation. And remember that simulation inside a simulation, expect the unexpected. It's just a theory to point out that could go a long way in explaining some other stuff that happened during this episode. Now, not to multi-level ourselves right out of having a good time, let's just assume that everything that does play out throughout the episode actually is happening in real time, so that we can just proceed with a breakdown. And I'll point out a couple of the things I'm talking about that were weird, and a couple of other things that may be illusion. Now, they really use dialogue in the next scene to establish a couple of things. Yes, she is indeed a Loki variant, but she says, "I'm not a faded photocopy. I'm not that anymore. I'm Sylvie." So she's taking Sylvie as an alias, an Easter egg for Sylvie Lushton, the Enchantress. But it seems as though the MCU is explaining to us they're sort of conflating a couple of different characters, as they've often done, like villains, Ego, Hela in the past in the MCU. They sort of borrow powers and or aesthetics wherever they need to put together the villain that best suits their narrative. And let's face it, some of these secondary and tertiary villains aren't going to get any shine or get a place in the MCU anyway. This is their best chance of making it into the storyline, so they just sort of get compiled into one. So again, unless she's lying, and I feel like I'm going to stop saying that now because it could be, again, they could either be lying at any point, she is a variant of Loki. She's just taken the alias of Sylvie. And then she explains how enchantment works. We just went over that. She's got to touch them and overtake their mind. But let's assume for a minute that Loki doesn't know how to enchant people and that he did need an explanation for how it actually works. And he finds out that after that, it gets a little bit complicated. So then we move to establishing through dialogue that in order to get off the planet, she knows how to power up the temp pad. They need an enormous amount of power. They need to catch the train to the outskirts of the city. And I really loved when they were working on a plan for how to get on that train. It reminded me totally of Thor Ragnarok. Let's do Get Help. I'm not doing Get Help, let's do Get Help. And there were some amazing callbacks to the Infinity Saga, especially some on this train scene that's coming up next. But in that moment, I couldn't help but feel like that Thor Ragnarok scene between Thor and Loki was definitely happening here between Loki and Sylvie. Once we get on the train, if you feel like the demeanor changed, which is why I brought up some enchantment might be going on, but really there was a demeanor change completely between the two of them. Not only are they not fighting, but they were basically flirting. Yep, Loki flirting with himself. It was getting a little awkward. She asks about his mother, he asks about hers, and when she says, "I barely remember her," blip of a memory at this point, it made me sort of think of the fact that she admits later when all of the TVA agents are variants and that the one she was interrogating, C-20, had been there for hundreds of years. She said a blip of a memory. Where could you go and spend hundreds of years? Remember, as Guardians live a long time, she's actually Sylvie Laufeyson, descendant of a frost giant. Maybe she had a similar upbringing. Loki, Thor, Sylvie, they could all be very old because of their heritage, or she could be very old because she's been at the TVA for so long. One of the outstanding theories that she may be an ex-TVA agent. My main contention, whether she is or she isn't, that Loki has been embroiled in a dance with the TVA for a lot longer than this variation of Loki even understands, and that's what could lead to two things. A, Sylvie's motivation to reach the Timekeepers in the first place to end this eternal dance, and B, a character like Richard E. Grant playing a much older version of Loki, either way showing that as long as there's been a TVA, as long as there's been variants of Loki stuck there like Mobius eternally to keep playing the stupid game over and over again against Sylvie's motivation to sort of break the chain. And of course, it leads to when you hear Mobius speak about meat and peace at the end of time, I'm going to ride a jet ski, etc. He doesn't understand that there will never be that it will always be there forever. This sort of Stockholm syndrome, he thinks he's supposed to be there the same way Hunter C-20 or maybe B-15 don't realize that at one point they were just variants themselves, now working for the TVA forever. That's what could lead to this Loki. Look, he just arrived at the TVA and already he's working for them wearing a variant jacket. Speaking of which, as she falls asleep and wakes up, she realizes that Loki now has shed the disguise he had on of one of the Blue Guard's outfits and is now wearing the clothes that he wore when he got there, including this big jacket that says variant across the back. Yeah, he wonders why he got noticed. Plus, he's singing a song. That language, by the way, is Asgardian. It said so in the subtitles. And Lynch, well, really begs the question as to why the cellist would have known that song in the first place, but making a rather spectacle of himself. And if this puts you in mind of the Lord of the Ring vibes, 100% the Lord of the Ring vibes. We then see him do the normal Asgardian thing, smash the cup on the floor and say another, exactly the same way Thor did all the way back in Thor 1 when he does that with the cup of coffee. And ironically, what they just did in the Rick and Morty episode with a character called Mr. Nimbus less than 48 hours ago, literally chugs a couple of bottles of wine, smashes them on the floor and says another. I cannot believe the synchronicity of this. Remember, Rick and Morty writers working on the Loki series. The crossover and the whole energy between Rick and Morty and Marvel right now is quite synchronicitous and unavoidable, apparently, as you can't imagine they would have sized this up and compared notes on what's going on in the script and planned those to release within 2 days of each other with the exact same dialogue. However, there it is, a callback to Thor 1, and now he's been noticed. But quickly, we also have to talk about another callback to the Infinity Saga when he admits the magic that his mother was introducing him to included turning flowers into frogs. Not the only thing he turned into a frog. Now, the second reference in the MCU to Throg when he turned his brother into a frog. Pretty amazing they keep calling this out. Maybe eventually we'll get to see some actual CGI of that scene, although I'm not holding my breath. Now, of course, he's been noticed and the guards are onto him. blowing up their entire plan. I also like that, ironically, he called her out for her plan always just involving fighting, and that's immediately where they go to. As soon as his plan's blown up, they both make their way out the window. He sees her fly out the window. She realizes she needs the temp pad more than anything. She flies out after him out the window. We then see a broken temp pad materialize on the ground. Now, if you want to take, again, at face value and consider that everything that's played out in front of us has mostly been true, no one's been lying, no one's been creating illusions, or no one's been enchanting each other, there is a good chance that he could be creating an illusion with this broken temp pad, which means that's why he's not as concerned for the rest of this episode with their seemingly dire and or fatal situation, because if he still has the temp pad and it's not broken and or it's not out of juice, that was also a magical illusion, then he knows at any moment he can just open up a door and leave and or take her with him. But the more he stretches out this scenario, the more he learns about this character who refused to work with him in the first place, and then all of a sudden again had a demeanor change while they were on the train. They don't quite trust each other. I'm not sure that they trust each other yet at all, honestly, or that it's gotten any better throughout this episode, but we do know that Loki's created a lot of illusions in the past. It's one of his calling cards throughout the Infinity Saga, so I would like to think at some point, if there was an illusion created, this broken temp pad is the first one we see, perhaps among others, which leads us to that really awkward scene as they're running up to the Ark and it's eventually destroyed, where a building's about to fall on them, and real quickly Loki turns around and places the building back up on itself. Now, at face value, when we first saw this, I saw a lot of people live in the watch party wondering if he had used the time stone, pointing towards the time stone from the original theory that he pocketed it originally when he was in the desk. But if you go back to that scene when he's seeing all the Infinity Stones in that drawer, you can hear a thud. You don't see him put the time stone back that he's holding, but you do sort of hear it drop inside the drawer. I don't believe he pocketed one, nor do I believe he used the time stone to put that building back up on itself. We saw that he has the power of telekinesis when he grabbed the Roomba to fight against Sylvie at the end of episode 2. This could just be a grander display of that power of telekinesis, placing the building back on itself. Plus, you don't see any sort of green time stone energy when he does this. He just puts his hands in fists and places it back up as if he's doing it with his mind. However, I would say, if he grabbed a time stone, what we've seen established from canon during Doctor Strange is that you would need to know how to wield it. It comes with some edification necessary. However, Loki's been schooled in magic, just like Doctor Strange, and he understands the power of the Infinity Stones, so presumably if he did swipe one, he may have the knowledge necessary and the power available to him, being half god, that he could use a time stone. However, I don't think that's what's going on. I also don't think he reverse enchanted the Enchantress. I think at most, the only real illusion he's creating is that broken temp pad in order to make this seem like a terrible situation, to get her in her most stressful moment to really admit what she's all about, maybe even befriend him. It's all a manipulation tactic. She may be trying to do the same thing to him, but ultimately, once he starts turning on the charm and playing this whole I'm getting drunk out of sorts, sly like a fox, yeah right, he's on top of it. He's manipulating this entire situation to his advantage. I do not think they are going to die on this planet. I also don't think that he has a broken temp pad or one that's out of juice. I think for sure he has one, maybe even swiped one earlier. And you got to remember, he's been inside the TVA agency for quite a while. Who's to say he doesn't have some of the tech that he's pocketed from around the office? Speaking of which, been in the TVA agency for quite a while. Again, when we heard the TVA agents were all just variants that were stuck there, kind of makes you wonder how long Loki has been there. Remember, Mobius told him time passes differently when you're in the TVA. Well, now he's been in the TVA for up to 3 episodes. He may have been there a lot longer than he thinks. He may be surprised to find out just how long he's been there doing all of these things. Guys, let me know all your thoughts down below. Oh, real quickly, I wanted to mention, when Mobius didn't answer the question how long he'd been there, perhaps Mobius doesn't know either. Perhaps that's one of the things that happens with the TVA. Guys, let me know all your thoughts down below. Craziest theories for what's going on, who's outsmarting who's using the power of illusion, what's really going on with TVA agents, and just how long has Loki been doing this dance with the TVA. I'm curious, as always, as to all your theories, and quickly, let's get into the giveaway stuff before I let you go. Alright, we're still giving away a PlayStation 5 now at 900,000 subscribers, as well as Disney Plus subscriptions every week while the shows are live. And in fact, let's announce a brand new winner for that right now. Best lyrics today with the comment, hopefully I can win the giveaway. Yeah, well, you did. Congratulations. Go ahead and DM me at IamFires on Instagram or email me on my business email that's on the About section of this channel. I've gone ahead and subscribed to your YouTube channel. All you have to do, DM me, I'll get your information, I'll send it right out. And guys, and it's that easy. If you want to be entered to win the PlayStations, the weekly subscriptions, or this amazing Avengers 118 graded in a 9.4 signed by Tom Hiddleston and Elizabeth Olsen, all the same rules will always apply. All you have to do, hit that subscribe button because you need to be a subscriber, then leave a comment down below. Because it's truly random, the more videos you comment on, the better chance you have of winning. All winners will be announced and selected at the end of the videos, the same way we're doing here. The best way to keep up with the content is to hit the notification bell with notifications turned on. And as always, if you appreciated today's video, I'd appreciate it if you'd hit the like button. My name's Michael Roman. You can find me over on Instagram and Twitter at IamFires. You can find me on Spotify, YouTube, Amazon, Apple, wherever you find your original music under the name All Fires. Thanks so much for checking out the channel, guys, and stick around. We'll be posting again real soon.